A commander stands alone in the heat outside a walled city, staring up at the sheer limestone blocks of Jericho. He hears the shift of gravel. He turns. Talk about angels. They are describing a specific biological category of spiritual creatures. You can walk into almost any modern church. Ask someone to describe an angel. The room fills with thick, choking smoke. The heavy stone doorposts of the temple vibrate with the sheer acoustic force of their voices. They do not visit wandering nomads. They do not walk on dirt roads. Our modern image of the angel is a historical car crash. Early European artists took the majestic wings of the cherubim, attached them to the ordinary human bodies of the Malakim, painted on the glowing halo of a Roman sun god, and smashed them all together into a single composite sketch. They took the terrifying alien guardians of the cosmic throne and domesticated them. They turned them into gentle, feathered beings who watch over sleeping children in nursery paintings. But in the ancient text, the categories are strict. The winged, burning beasts stay by the throne. The human-looking couriers walk in the dust. And because the Malakim look so profoundly ordinary, they create a completely different kind of psychological tension on the ground. When a seraph appears in a vision, you know instantly that you are standing in the presence of the divine. You fall on your face immediately. The visual evidence is overwhelming. But when a Malak walks up to you in the physical world, you have no idea who you are talking to. You just see a traveler. You just see a man resting in the shade, until he says something that makes the blood freeze in your veins, and you will get the exact same picture. A human face, a white robe, a golden halo, and two massive, feathered wings. We have centuries. Judges, chapter 6. A man beats out wheat in a stone winepress. The air is choked with chaff. The deep stone walls hide him from the Midianite raiders swarming the valley. He is sweating. He is afraid. He looks up. A stranger is sitting under the oak tree. The stranger is resting in the shade. He holds a wooden staff. He looks like any other traveler wandering through the hill country of Ophrah. He speaks, "The Lord is with you, O mighty man of valor." Gideon does not drop to his knees. Gideon does not hide his face. Gideon argues. He snaps back at the stranger. He complains about the foreign oppression. He demands to know where the miracles of Egypt went. He talks to this figure the way you would talk to a naive tourist who does not understand the brutal political reality of the neighborhood. He does this because the figure looks entirely, unremarkably normal. The conversation continues. The stranger issues a command. "Go in this might of yours and save Israel." And right here, the text pulls the same theological trick. Verse 14 does not say the messenger spoke. Verse 14 says, "And the Lord turned to him and said, the sender and the sent have merged," of Renaissance art, marble statues, and Christmas pageants that have cemented this image into our collective imagination. We think we know exactly what an angel is. Gideon still does not fully understand. He asks for a sign. He asks the man to stay right there. He runs to his house. He slaughters a young goat. He kneads flour and bakes unleavened bread. He carries the heavy, steaming meat in a basket and the warm broth in a clay pot. He places the meal on a rock under the oak tree. The stranger reaches out. The tip of his wooden staff touches the meat. Fire erupts from the solid stone. The rock scorches. The meat and the unleavened bread are instantly consumed in a massive flash of heat, and the stranger vanishes. The mundane illusion shatters. The realization hits Gideon like a physical blow. He panics. He cries out in absolute terror, "Alas! O Lord God, for now I have seen the angel of the Lord face to face." He expects to drop dead on the spot. He had been arguing with a deity, treating him like a lost traveler. The terror of the Malak is not that it radiates blinding glory. It is that it wears ordinary dust. When heaven invades earth in the Hebrew Bible, it does not always announce itself with trumpets. It sneaks in. It looks like a traveler who needs water. It looks like a stranger resting in the shade. But if you look closer, if you strip away the Italian oil paintings and step back into the dirt of the ancient Near East, you find it hides absolute divine authority inside a completely vulnerable, human exterior. And that ancient pattern does not stop. In the book of Judges, it points directly to the ultimate collision of heaven and earth. A desperate slave collapsed by a dry spring, and the messenger spoke with the voice of the sender. A terrified brother sent ordinary men on camels, and they carried the full legal weight of his name. An old man served roasted calf under an oak tree, and the dusty traveler promised the impossible. A mob tried to break down a wooden door in Sodom, and the vulnerable tourists brought the judgment of heaven. A hiding farmer argued with a stranger in a winepress, and a wooden staff pulled fire from solid rock. The six-winged seraphim stayed by the cosmic throne and guarded the lethal threshold of glory. But the ultimate word put on human flesh and walked into the dirt of our world to stay. Same pattern, same God. But maybe the part that stays with me most is the dust on the sandals. We want the divine to look obvious, a reality that shatters the popular image. An angel is not a species. It is a job description. The beings you think you know do. We want the marble statues and the golden halos. We want the burning cherubim shaking the stone doorposts, so we do not have to wrestle with doubt. But the Malak just sits in the shade of an oak tree, wiping roasted meat from his mouth. He hides absolute, terrifying sovereignty inside extreme vulnerability. If you are in a season where you are begging God for a blazing celestial sign, for a tearing of the sky, you might be looking in the wrong direction. You might be ignoring the completely ordinary moments where the king is handing you a decree. The divine does not always shout from a glowing cloud. Sometimes, he just sits at the edge of your winepress. He takes on the form of a traveler. He speaks through the profoundly unremarkable, waiting to see if you will recognize the authority in his voice. And may the God who does not need wings to reach you, who is perfectly willing to walk into the searing heat of your desert, open your eyes to recognize his messengers when they arrive, not exist in the text the way you think they do. The ancient writers were operating with a completely different legal framework, a different vocabulary, and a different understanding of how the unseen realm bleeds into the physical world. And discovering the truth changes how you read almost every major encounter in the Old Testament. It changes what you look for. It changes the stakes of ordinary conversations. To feel the weight of this story, you cannot start with the spiritual. You have to start with the cultural baggage we have been carrying for 2,000 years. We are visually conditioned. When we hear the English word angel, our brains instantly fetch a very specific image. We see the stained glass. A man is standing on the dirt path ahead of him, not a creature of blinding light, not a six-winged being hovering above the earth. We feel the cold, smooth marble of statues in European cathedrals. We see the gold leaf pressed into Renaissance canvases, the long white robes, the majestic, swan-like wings extending from human shoulder blades. We inherited this picture largely from Greek and Roman mythology, specifically the winged goddesses of victory. Early Christian artists needed a way to depict the divine, so they borrowed the visual vocabulary of the empire they lived in. They took a Roman icon, painted a halo around its head, and called it holy. It is a brilliant piece of artistic branding. It is also completely absent from the narrative stories of the Hebrew Bible. Whenever a human being encounters one of these beings on the ground, in Genesis, or Judges, or Kings, the wings are missing. The glowing auras are missing. The hovering above the dirt is missing. Instead, they eat roasted meat. They sit in the shade of oak trees to escape the afternoon heat. They get their feet washed to remove the grime of the road. They are repeatedly mistaken for ordinary travelers, ordinary soldiers, ordinary men. The confusion comes down to a single English word. The word angel entered our vocabulary as a transliteration, not a true translation. When early English scholars were working with the text, they came across a specific Greek word, angelos. Instead of translating what the word actually meant, they just sounded it out. They morphed angelos into angel, just a man. He is holding a drawn bronze sword. He has dust on his sandals, and he is casting a perfectly ordinary shadow on the desert floor. And over centuries of religious tradition, that word hardened. It stopped being a functional description of a job, and it became a biological category, a distinct species of spiritual creature with its own anatomy. But the ancient Hebrew mind did not categorize the universe that way. When the Old Testament authors looked at the unseen realm, they did not sort beings by their spiritual anatomy. They sorted them by their function. They did not care what a being was made of. They cared who sent them. This changes everything. Because if you read the text assuming an angel is a creature with wings and a halo, you will completely miss the legal weight of what is happening on the ground. You will miss the subtle, terrifying reality of how God operates in the dirt and the dust. The Renaissance paintings are not a window into the biblical text. They are a wall blocking you from seeing it. To understand what is actually happening when heaven invades earth, you have to bypass the Greek and the Latin entirely. You have to go back to the language of the prophets. You have to look at the exact word. The ancient scribes wrote down when a pregnant, desperate runaway slave collapsed by a spring of water in the middle of a wasteland. Genesis chapter 16. A pregnant woman runs. The Egyptian sun beats down. The dust coats her throat. She is a slave. She is abused. She is alone. The commander does not immediately fall on his face in religious terror. He does not cover his eyes. Instead, he reaches for his own weapon. She collapses by a spring of water on the road to Shur. She is waiting to die. Verse 7 tells us what happens next. The angel found her. The word translated angel here is the Hebrew Malak. It appears 213 times in the Old Testament, and it has nothing to do with wings or halos. The root of the word simply means to dispatch, to send on a journey. A Malak is a messenger, an emissary, a courier carrying a decree of authority. Look at Genesis chapter 32. Jacob prepares to meet his murderous brother, Esau. He is terrified. He needs to negotiate. So verse 3 says Jacob sent Malachim ahead. Did Jacob summon spiritual beings from the heavenly realms? No. He sent his own human servants. He sent ordinary men on camels. Same exact Hebrew word used here. A king sends a Malak. A general sends a Malak. A prophet sends a Malak. The word does not describe what a being is made of or form. It describes what a being is doing. Malak is not a biological category. It is a royal appointment. Whether the messenger is made of dust or spirit is entirely secondary. The text does not care. The text only cares about whose voice the messenger is carrying. If the sender is human, the Malak is human. If the sender is God, the Malak is from the spiritual realm. But their anatomy is irrelevant to their title. But when a Malak is sent by Yahweh himself, a strange legal mechanism activates. Something happens to the messenger's identity in the dust of the desert and asks a standard, tactical question: are you for us or for our enemies? He asks this because the figure standing in front of him, something that modern readers completely miss, but an ancient Hebrew would have recognized instantly in a court of law. In the ancient Near East, a royal emissary was not a delivery boy. He was a proxy. This was governed by a strict legal principle of agency recognized across the ancient world. When a king or an emperor dispatched a messenger carrying his signet ring, that messenger carried the full legal authority, the full status, and the very identity of the sender. When the emissary walked into a foreign throne room, unrolled a parchment heavy with hot wax, and opened his mouth, he did not quote the sovereign in the third person. He did not say, "My master tells you to surrender." He spoke in the first person. He said, "I will burn your city." To insult the messenger was to insult the king. To bow to the messenger was to bow to the king. The two identities merged completely in the moment of the decree. If reading the Bible through this ancient legal lens, instead of modern tradition, is opening up the text for you, you're exactly who this channel is for. Drop a thought in the comments and hit subscribe. Because every week we go deeper into the text than you knew was possible. Looks completely, unremarkably human. This happens again and again in the ancient texts. A woman sitting by a dry well, waiting for her child to die. So the messenger becomes the king. This ancient law of agency is the only way to understand what happens when the Malak Yahweh, the messenger of the Lord, shows up in the Old Testament. When Hagar is weeping by that spring in the desert, the messenger speaks to her. But look at what the text actually records. The messenger does not say, "God will multiply your offspring." The messenger says, "I will surely multiply your offspring." A few verses later, Hagar names the deity who spoke to her. She does not thank a spiritual creature. She declares that she has seen God himself. The messenger is not a separate voice. It is the presence of Yahweh, made local. The biblical authors are not confused. They are playing a deliberate, theological blurring game. They will introduce a character as the Malak, the messenger, and by the end of the paragraph, that same character is simply referred to as Yahweh. The distinction vanishes. The representative becomes indistinguishable from the sender. But the most shocking display of this legal reality does not happen with a glowing figure in the sky. It happens in the brutal heat of the afternoon, outside a tent in Hebron, over a meal of roasted calf and curds, looks up and converses with a traveler. A farmer beating out wheat in a stone winepress, hiding from raiders, turns around and sees a stranger. Abraham sits in the shade of the tent door. The heat of the day presses down on the oaks of Mamre. The air is heavy and still. He looks up. 3 men are standing in the dirt. They do not descend from the clouds. They do not blind him with celestial glory. They just appear on the road. Abraham runs. He bows to the ground. He begs them to stay. Water is poured to wash the desert grit from their feet. Sarah needs fine flour to bake cakes. A servant slaughters a tender, choice calf. The meat roasts over the fire. Abraham stands by them under the tree, serving them curds and milk and the roasted meat. They chew, they swallow, they rest in the shade. This is not a spiritual vision. It is a physical meal. The text repeatedly calls them anashim, men, mortals. But the narrator opened the entire chapter with a very different identification. Genesis 18. Verse 1 gives away the ending before the story even begins. And the Lord appeared to him by the oaks of Mamre. Yahweh appears. But Abraham sees men. The men finish eating. They ask about Sarah. And suddenly, the grammar of the text shifts. The plural they collapses into a singular he, the figure sitting in the dirt, wiping food from his mouth, speaks, resting under an oak tree. 2 men walk into the corrupt city of Sodom at twilight, and the locals do not see celestial beings radiating divine glory. I will surely return to you about this time next year. And Sarah, your wife, shall have a son. The narrator does not say, the messenger said. The narrator says, and the Lord said. The ancient law of agency has erased the boundary between heaven and earth. The sender and the sent are occupying the exact same physical space. Yahweh is speaking through vocal cords, under a tree, in the searing afternoon heat. But then, 2 of those men get up and keep walking. They walk toward the valley. They arrive at the gates of Sodom at twilight. Lot sees them and bows. The men of the city see them and riot. The locals try to break down a wooden door to drag them out into the street. Nobody in the mob is intimidated by divine glory, because there is no divine glory visible. There are just 2 vulnerable foreigners trapped in a house. The biblical authors are fiercely consistent. When a Malak walks onto the physical stage, they look exactly like us. So where did the wings come from? If the messengers on the ground are walking in leather sandals and eating roasted calf, why is our cultural imagination filled with feathers and flight? Because there is another category of beings, and they never walk in the dust. They just see 2 foreign tourists who need a place to sleep. Same phenomenon, same ordinary appearance. Most people assume that when the biblical authors, the Hebrew texts, actually do describe spiritual creatures with wings, but they never call them malakim. They call them cherubim and seraphim. Read Ezekiel chapter 1 or Isaiah chapter 6. The prophets are suddenly granted a vision of the cosmic control room, the throne room of Yahweh, and the creatures occupying that sacred space do not look human. They are terrifying. Composite beasts, Ezekiel describes the cherubim as having 4 faces: a man, a lion, an ox, and an eagle. They have massive wings, and the sound of those wings moving is like the deafening roar of crashing floodwaters. Their bodies are covered in eyes. They gleam like polished brass and move like flashes of lightning. Isaiah sees the seraphim. The word literally translates in Hebrew to the burning ones. They are fiery, 6-winged beings hovering above the throne. They are not messengers. They are boundaries. Their entire function is to guard the lethal, radioactive threshold between the absolute purity of the Creator and the corruption of the physical world. Cherubim stood with flaming swords at the entrance to Eden to keep humanity out. They were hammered out of solid gold to cover the mercy seat on the Ark of the Covenant. Wings stretched out to protect the presence of God. When Isaiah sees the seraphim, he does not invite them to sit in the shade. He drops to the stone floor and expects to be incinerated.